I'm a research fellow at the University of York in sociology, and I've been studying smoking and cessation, mostly cessation, since about 2009. Literally just smoking and cessation, and then latterly e-cigs, because and I'm going to say e-cigs, I'm not going to say vaping, for a reason which I will tell you later on, and you can argue with me if you like, but I look forward to that. But yeah, because I do feel strongly that you have to look at e-cigs in the context of smoking and cessation, and if you don't really understand cessation and smoking, you have to have it's all part of the same thing. Okay, so I'm working on a project which is funded by Cancer Research UK, which is basically the research question is, are people in poorer areas successfully using e-cigs to quit smoking? That is what I'm interested in, and I'm doing the fieldwork for that in the northwest of England and the northeast of England, so it's kind of comparative, one rural area and one more city area, to see if there's any differences there. I haven't been doing that very long, but before that I was doing e-cig research in County Durham, so I've kind of done quite a bit of field work here as well. So what I'm going to talk about is what I see as happening on the ground, and then other people I'm sure will disagree or say that's not happening, something else is happening, but as I see it. Okay, so now the first thing is just in case you don't, I mean, you probably all know this, but I don't know, how much knowledge you all have, so forgive me if I'm telling you things you already know. But the first thing is, I think it's worth pointing out that in terms of the supply of e-cigs, that there's a huge diversity, because you'll all have seen a smart vape shop with bright lights and beautiful models. I don't mean people, I mean beautiful models of e-cigs. And these wonderful kind of great ones with these great big things with sort of sparkle and shiny and etc. in glass cases and all looking wonderful. But what you might not notice unless you're specifically looking for is in poorer neighbourhoods, you don't get those vape shops. You get market stores, you get car boot sales, you get individuals selling stuff on eBay, coils which may or may not be genuine, etc. etc. You get discount shops which have really taken to selling e-cigs. You get Poundland, you get Pound Shack, you get all those shops selling liquid for £1 and a basic e-cig for £1 as well. I'm told it tastes disgusting when I'm trying it, but anyway, it's there. And that's where most people in those areas are buying things. So the vape shops, we can talk about them, and that's great. And there's some, really committed people who've given up smoking and are really messianic about the whole thing. But they are the tip of the iceberg, and where poorer people, and that's where smokers are, is not in those vape shops. They're actually in these kind of discount stores and on those market stores. And there, on the market store, they might get a Generation 2, like pen type, this, not an e-cig, but you know what I mean, this sort of thing, for £5, and the liquids for 3 for £5. So very kind of very low price. But of course, what they're competing with is tobacco, which is costing roll your own illicit, which is maybe, I don't know, £9.50 for a 50-gram pouch, which might last 2 weeks. So when you say to people they're going to save £9 a day on their 20 quid pack of fags, then obviously that's not what they're spending. But I think you probably all know that. So that's just the kind of the background, if you like. And then beyond that, so the people I'm talking to are smokers and e-cig users. So basically I'm recruiting people who smoke or recently quit, in whatever way, and also e-cig users. So there's a kind of mixture, because the other point that I think is really important is that people have this trajectory over years, which they might smoke and then they might give up, and then they might smoke again, and they might give up again, and then they might take up e-cigs, then they might give up, and then they might take up smoking again. And in public health, you tend to sort of have these snapshots of people, you are a smoker, or you are an e-cig user, or you are a never smoker. But actually, if you actually talk to people a little bit more detail about their life story, it's much more complicated than that. And this is kind of assumption that you smoke and then you quit and that's it. It's actually, you get people who've given up for 10 years and then start smoking again. And I'm sure those of you who work in smoking cessation will know about that. So, but I think it's an important point to make. So these are the people I'm talking to, and what I'm doing is I've talked to people on a kind of first stage, and then I'm re-interviewing in about 6 months' time well, probably for 9 months after I first talked to them, to see what's changed and whether the people who say, oh yes, you know, my e-cigarette's marvellous and I've given up, whether they've still given up or whether they've gone back smoking or whether they're, you know, what's happening. And the people who said, no, I'm never going to touch them, they're much worse than smoking, I'm not going near those things, etc., whether they've changed their mind. And so that's the idea. But I'm not just seeing them twice. It's generally people I get to know over the 2-year period of the project, because you can do a formal interview, but what you actually get, if you get the texture of people's lives and what's actually happening about smoking and cessation, you really need to get to know people quite well, because people are defensive about these things. They have this script that they have ready to tell you about, you know, why they're doing what they're doing, because it's very kind of, it's something that's very tied up with moral, you know, what's the right thing to do and values, etc., and what they know they're expected to say or expected to do. So you need to kind of know people quite well to actually understand what's going on, I feel. And obviously I've got the luxury of some funding to be able to do that, and I realise that that's hard to come by, so you can't always have that time to talk to people and get to know them. Okay, so what sort of thing am I getting? I mean, it's very early days, and I hope you won't, this has been recorded, but I may tell you something different next year when I have a bit more detail, a bit more information, so I hope I won't be eating my words at that point. But the thing I wanted to mention briefly was the kind of barriers that people you may not be aware of that stop people from using e-cigs, even if they do believe, even if A, they want to quit, and B, they haven't been put off by the scare stories, and they do actually believe that e-cigs are a safer option, which of course a lot of people are now, you know, worried because of what's been in the media. And the kind of barriers that I've seen are this business about addiction, which I know is one of the questions that somebody raised. And there's this thing about you're still addicted if you're using an e-cig, and that's just as bad. And I try to say to people, well, yes, but you're not going to die, so that's kind of better. But there's this very strong moral feeling that addiction is bad, and if I'm addicted to smoking, and then I give up and I'm addicted to e-cigs, that's, you know, I haven't made any improvement in my kind of moral position, so that there's no point. I'm saying, yes, but you're not. Anyway, I won't go on. You can see the point I'm making, and that's actually really, really strong with a lot of people. So I think we kind of need to be aware of that. What else? I can't read my own writing. Yes, confusing information. There's so many products, and I mean you'll know that yourselves, and I think everybody finds it confusing. There's so many products, and there's all the different strengths, all different flavours, and people do find it difficult. And they're also given conflicting advice, which is what Jacques was saying about this marvellous training he's doing for vape shops, about, you know, so that people have correct information. Because what I'm finding, I'm also talking to vendors, different retailers, vape shops, but also more informal stall holders and what have you, and they all give the best advice they can, but it's often wildly different from the best advice given by somebody else, because it's based mainly on their own experience and then on kind of half-digested things off the web, and sort of so you get some fairly interesting things said about nicotine and about everything, actually. And one shop will say, oh no, you couldn't possibly give up with that kind of e-cig, that won't work, you have to have this kind of e-cig. And the other shop will say the exact opposite. And then they'll sell you a huge expensive model for £150, but then give you very low nicotine, recommend a very low nicotine, and then the person says, well, it's not really working, and they're still smoking. Or a lot of people I've met who have this marvellous, wonderful model, and then they're still having their 2 cigarettes in the morning and 2 in the evening, and I'm saying, well, maybe you should try the high. Anyway, never mind. I'm not an expert. I'll leave it to Jacques to sort that one out. So that's difficult for people, I think. And what else? Yes, the FAF factor, what I call FAF factor, which is my scientific word for it, which is just all the messing about you have to do, filling in the liquids, and then you spill it all down yourself, and then you put it on the table, and then it kind of rolls off and breaks, and then you've got it in your pocket, and then there's a hole in your pocket, and it smashes on the floor. Just endless stories of, you know, spending all this money, and then, you know, no more e-cig, and then I can't spend another £150. You know, it's just, or else even if you're spending much less, you had one and then, yes, you lost it, you broke it, whatever, all that sort of thing. Which of course with cigarettes are an amazing product, because they're designed, you know, they're brilliant design, because you have a packet and you have one, and if you drop it or squash it or lose it or give it to somebody else, you have another one exactly the same. It's fantastic, and there's no hassle at all. It's just so easy. You know, they are an amazing thing. Sorry, I'm stop there, going on about how wonderful cigarettes are. edit that out, okay? What else is there?
Cut.
Yes. Yes. What else is there? Yeah. Just one last point. I think I'm going over my time probably. Am I okay, Joey?
Okay.
Well, two last points actually.
Or maybe three.
Yes. Yes. One thing is I just want to explain what I was saying about why I say e-cig and I don't say vaping, because again the people I'm talking to they don't use the word vaping. They don't know the word vaping or vapor. They don't like the vape shop. They go in and it's smoky and they're saying, well, this is full of smoke. I know it's not smoke, it's vapor, but it's full of smoke and that's really unhealthy and I don't like going in there, and it's full of kind of scary men with tattoos and neckbeards and you know, I don't feel comfortable in that place, sort of thing, and they'd much rather go to their local discount store and buy something, or the local store. And you know, I'm making a joke of it, but actually it's quite a serious point, because it's very off-putting to women in particular. And nobody's talking about that, bizarrely, even though, you know, the kind of face of vaping is overwhelmingly a male face. No one's really talking about that. And I mean, there are a lot of women using e-cigs, but I think there is still an issue about, you know, whose culture this is. And if you're interested in this, my colleague at Exeter, Hannah Fowman, has written a very good paper on kind of two types of e-cig users: the kind of practical, I just want to give up smoking, I don't want these fancy flavours, I don't want this fancy stuff, I just want a basic thing that stops me smoking, that kind of user, and I don't like these vape shops. And then the pleasure, getting to pleasure here, the user who's really into the whole hobby thing, who loves the flavours, who has 10 different models, not looking at anyone in particular, Dave, but 20 different models.
Keep going.
Yes.
The same person can move from one side to the other.
Absolutely, yes. We'll start the argument in a second. You lot won't get run anyway. But anyway, so there are these two kind of groups. I think we need to make sure we don't forget the kind of, you know, the group that are put off by all the razzmatazz in our enthusiasm for the other groups, sort of thing, who make more of the noise, which is good. I'm glad that they're making that noise. Yes, so I think that's pretty much what I want to say. I was going to have a wonderful point to end with, but thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Francis.